Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most all the way from the East Coast. And as always, folks, I am in airplane mode, and now a man who will remind you that there are 4 eyes in artificial intelligence, but there is no you in it. A man who needs no introduction. How you doing today, my one black friend?
I am well. Thank you so much. How are you, Pocket Locker?
I'm all right. Now, I don't know if anybody's told you this, but I'm sure you already know this because you're a troll. Your name gets people in trouble. Every time somebody talks, because every time somebody talks about you on there, they're like, yeah, so my one black friend said this, and my one black friend said that. And then the person starts looking at him crazy, and then you actually have to explain, no, that's his name.
That's a guy. That's my handle.
That's a guy. That's his handle. That's what we call him.
That's what my grandmama called me, and my daddy, and my mom.
But if you don't explain it, like, you have to explain this every time. It's happened to me a couple times. I'm like, do you really think I have one black friend?
Aren't you lucky to have at least one black friend?
Oh, man.
Well, look, the idea is to be memorable. And I'm not going to be like Jim Caviezel and say I was Jesus. Well, he says he is Jesus. So he's got his own problems. But yeah, I think it's easy to remember. I don't know that what I say will always be so easy to remember. I would assume not. But the name. And, you know, they can always have me as a guest on their show.
It's a good one. It's a good one. It's a classic. It's sort of like why I won't get rid of Hunter Biden's laptops. Like everybody loves it, so now I'm stuck with it. Oh man. So today we are talking about my favorite topic, just the thing that just brightens me up and makes me feel good inside, which is why people leave the church. Oh, leaving the church. Love to talk about that, leaving the church, that freeing yourself from religion. That's wonderful. It's really great. Makes you feel good. But, gang, we still got some skin in the game because it's actually coming from an apologetics channel. We have started this series. We've looked at this channel once before, I think on Pocket Locker 86, and I think that was sort of their first season where they sat down and interviewed people about why they left the church. And I think we're going to be looking at the opening for their second season. So I find these stories interesting. It was a really weird feeling the last time. Like the conversation was really like it played out nice. It was like well produced. It was very cordial. But then I was kind of reflecting on how it clearly has no impact on this person. And that was a bit less promising. The other thing that concerns me, gang, is that I know this person is an apologist. And from their perspective, you know, they grew up in the church, then they left the church, then they became an apologist and rededicated their life to Christ. I'm really afraid that, you know, I am concerned that there's ability to sort of weaponize that as an apologetics, like priming people with, you know, talking points about deconversion stories, just or sort of trivializing it, right? Whereas I see, you know, the mass exodus of people from the church as a serious phenomenon. Even if you're a Christian, right? Take it seriously. Like there's a lot of people leaving the church, whereas, you know, this channel kind of rewrites that into, oh no, it's just part of someone's journey with God. You know, it's not a real permanent or sort of denial or devotion from I don't know what the right phrase is, but that it's kind of denying the reality of it. So it's a bit weird. Well, but that's kind of what I think getting into this clip here. But one black friend, what made you leave the church? There was a day, right? You had like a
the Wi-Fi sucked. The Wi-Fi sucked during service. I'm joking, of course. I stopped believing in God, and I had read the Bible all the way through, and that's what did it, folks. And I questioned, could I have loyalty, fealty? Could I praise and worship a being like the God of the Bible who was so disgusting in his behavior? He's murderous. I had to tell someone, like, look, God and Jesus solved pretty much every problem by killing.
Pretty much. Yep.
Killing.
If
I don't love Jesus and accept him in my heart as my personal Lord and Savior, I should suffer forever.
Yeah.
I'd say that's taking it a bit far. God was upset with the Egyptians, so he slaughtered all the firstborn. He killed cattle, frogs, all these things. He just murdered. Noah's Ark story, killed all but 8 people. I can't solve my problems with anger. I can solve my problems with productive solutions. Some of them may even be creative. But we can't. I would never want to teach that to my children, that was the way. You have to solve this with your anger. As opposed to, look, if you're upset because you care, not because you don't. So you have to come up with a solution that is effective and possibly a caring solution, because maybe that's what's really needed. And if people were so deceitfully wicked all the time that God had to wipe everyone out, maybe the solution was to send Jesus back then instead of 2,000 years ago, right? He could have got an early start.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think for me, that did it to start. And then what finished it was I had still kept going to church services.
That was going to be my next question. So you did keep going.
Yeah, I kept going. I was an atheist in the pew, and I probably wasn't the only one in there.
I'm just going to say that that's another big mischaracterization. And a lot of us do stay in churches even after we no longer believe, right? So this idea that the apologists and Christians sort of put out that we do this because we're just so anxious and we just want to get out of the church. It's not true, right?
It's not true. So it was quiet quitting, which is a term that's become popular. It was quiet quitting church, and there were people who I loved there and people who I really thoroughly enjoyed seeing. The minister's wife's mother was someone I couldn't wait to walk up to and say hello and give a hug to after every service that I went to, But haven't hugged that woman in years. So it was hard giving some of that up, which is why I probably hung on for another year or two. I think it was maybe 2 years as an atheist going to church. And I lived closer. So now I live further away and I haven't gone there in ages.
Do you think it's important to read it as an adult? Like, I assume you were grown when this happened.
Yeah, I've read the Bible. I've been an atheist about 16, 17 years. I have I'd say we've known each other since kindergarten, friend, and he'll put Bible verses on his Facebook pretty much every day. My response is often unyielding. Read the whole Bible, folks. Read it all. And I've been typing this for probably a year, where I say, if you'd like a free Bible, private message me and I will send you one free of charge. Not one taker. And I know people are paying attention to this guy, smart guy, popular guy, but nobody seems to want a free Bible. And I don't wonder why they're not going to read it. They already have one probably, and they don't read that either.
Right. Right.
So,
Um, I think that's a huge problem. And I don't know how a person can even continue to be in their faith, honestly, because it's like God wrote you a book and you're not interested in reading it. I sort of thought of it as, if I thought it was going to rain and you thought it was not going to rain, you know, we could make those predictions, record them, and the next day, we'll get up and go outside, and either it will rain or it won't. We could check various points throughout the day. We could check the forecast. We could find out really easily.
mhm.
To me, Christians at this point, they make their prediction, and then it's like stay inside all day, close the windows, shut the blinds. Make sure you don't look. Make sure you don't actually try to confirm if this is true or not. And I do see that as a moral failing, especially given what's at stake, even in the religious claims itself. Like, if this is what you're putting your eternity on, if this is what you're putting your everything on, and they're all evangelical. In other words, when you come to them with a problem, no matter how they slice it, they're either going to get you to turn to Jesus or they're going to pray for you. Well, don't you think, as a grown person, if I come to you with a problem and you're going to take it to the Lord or insist that I take it to the Lord, that we demonstrate that the Lord can actually solve our problems? You know what I mean? So there is a bit of, I think, responsibility there that only religion gets a pass on. There's nothing else in our lives that you're allowed to sell to other people, completely free of responsibility for what you're actually trying to sell to people. But yeah, it would help a great deal if they read the book. Let's go ahead and jump into this conversation. I wonder what they're going to say. I guess I didn't say why I left the church, but it's the same thing. It was a long
All right,
gradual.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn my Wi-Fi hotspot on my phone.
Oh,
Uh,
okay, okay, no worries. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get them started. I'm
I'm
sure
on
she'll
phone.
do the intro or whatever. All right, so let me go ahead and share this. But yeah, for me it was a really long process. I I actually the longer it gets, the harder it is for me to piece it together. That's how long it was. Um, I remember at some point, um, in graduate school, realizing I no longer wanted to identify as a Christian, um, and that it wasn't that I didn't think I could do that and truly be like, uh, you know, being scientific. As weird as that sounds, I kind of feel like I had a professional out that a lot of people don't have, right? Like, I'm a scientist, and you could be a scientist and have faith. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can't have faith scientifically, if that makes sense. So that was kind of like, I personally, um, you know, think it's better for me, let's just say that, to have that type of commitment, and because it makes it easier for me to live consistently. Not to say that, and that's not to say that, like, I think that I live a scientific life, or that I make all the best decisions according to science. But with that particular thing, that was how I needed to resolve that situation. All right, I'm not sure what's going on with my one black friend. I think he's just having issues with his connection. So, uh, man, that's something we should try to do on this channel. I have talked about it a few other times, but I would really like to piece together my deconversion, like, more thoroughly than I've been able to. It's actually been a problem. Like, I've literally been on other channels like Neil, the 604 Atheist channel, specifically to be interviewed about my deconstruction story, and it's just like I don't know what happened. Oh man. All right, you're back. All right, let's go ahead and
Yes, I'm trying to turn my phone
ahead.
on to use the mobile hotspot, and I think it will work better.
Okay.
I don't know how to do that though. I've done it, but my computer is an Asus computer, which, by the way, folks, is far from being your only choice for laptop purchase. And I would not buy an Asus product with other people's money or my own. I just wouldn't do it. I don't think that's the best use of your money. You might want to keep warm so you could burn it as a better method of spending the money. It's I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you feel about Asus sort of the way I feel about Comcast. All right, gang, let's go ahead and jump into this video here.
Overall, the events that led me away from the church is I think I would summarize it as the church that I've been to is more about Jesus coming in the future. Just figure out how to deal with life right now until he comes, as opposed to like, I need to know how to deal with life right now. And then when Jesus comes, good. But like, need help right now. And the church has got to be relevant for what's going on right now. So that's kind of where I'm at this point.
What's up, everybody? This is Lisa Fields, the founder and president of the Jude 3 Project, and I'm so excited because we have season 2 of Why Don't Go. Now, if you've been tracking with us for any amount of time, you know that we have a very popular series that we started last year called Why Don't Go. And the purpose of Why Don't Go is to sit down with young adults to discuss why they left the church. In the first part, we just love to listen to them. I feel like listening is an act of love, and we can't be good apologists if we're not good listeners. So the first part of this,
right? Aren't you like skirt? Wait. So wait. Right? Y'all see the cringe? Do you feel what you see what I'm talking about? Like she's really trying to school people on how to basically use people's deconversion against them, right? Like how to take people's deconversion stories and how are you listening? How are you listening? This is the other thing. Like this gets into something that's going on in our community right now, right? Everybody had their sort of fourth wave new atheist fucking time, right? Where everybody was debating and jumping on and debate. And the debate me bros are still around and they're still annoying. But then everybody was like, oh, debates aren't cool anymore. You know, they're so hostile and they don't go anywhere. Yeah, they don't go anywhere because the people we're dealing with don't listen. And so now everybody wants to have conversations, right? So you sit down and you're gonna collab, you're gonna make a little video together, and you're gonna talk over where you might disagree, right? And this is what we see constantly. And at the end of the day, at the end of the stream, everybody's just patting themselves on the back. Oh my goodness, we came together, we had a conversation, we just modeled how to change the world. When's the world gonna be so great once the world realizes we can sit down and have conversations like that? Nobody is impressed with conversations, gang. Conversations do not equal material change for people. And I get that awareness is a very important part of the process. Awareness is, and you can do a lot of awareness raising through conversations. But gang, do you know which important step awareness is? Yeah, the first one. It's the first step. The first step is awareness, knowing there's an issue, getting some new information. We're not gonna stay at awareness. It's like, what are you gonna do now, right? And so this drives me crazy. What am I getting at? People have figured out how to sit through a conversation and listen to what you say. And it all goes through the magic funnel. In one ear, out the other. In one ear, out the other. And so this is what scares me, because you're gonna have people in your circle and your family, friends, if they were watching her, right, they're gonna hit you like they're ready to really have the conversation about why you don't go to church, and she's gonna model for them how to basically hear you but not listen, and then use that as part of how to be a better apologist, and that's not really a good situation. All right.
Pocket lock.
And he's back. No worries. Take your time. Take your time.
Computer, which nobody has to buy. I don't think there's a rule. I got to get earbuds, otherwise it'll just be unbearable.
Oh,
so
echo. Yeah. Go ahead.
can you mute me and then I'll come back?
Yeah.
Thank
No
you.
worries. All right, let's do that. Boom.
Series, I'll just be listening to them for 4 episodes, and then we'll have Q&A where they'll get to ask me and my co-host Rasul Berry some hard-hitting questions about church and the faith. Season 2 is located in the beautiful city of Washington, D.C. I know you're going to enjoy the conversation
My One
we
Black
have
Friends
with young
link is in the
professionals
description.
about why they no longer go to church. Let's get into episode 1. What's up, y'all? This is Lisa Fields, the founder and president of the Jude 3 Project. And I'm so excited because we are in season 2 of our Why Don't Go series. Now, many of you may have missed season 1, but you should definitely go back and check it out. It's when I sit down with young adults, young professionals who no longer go to church for various reasons to just listen and understand. We live in a culture that sometimes likes to antagonize and be critical of people and tweet at people, but there's not much listening going on and understanding. And we want to create a culture here, Jude 3 Project, where we're listening to people, we're understanding their questions so we can better engage. And I think the church needs to do that. So I'm going to be listening to these dynamic people, and we're in one of my favorite cities.
All right, pause the tape. Let me put her over just a little bit, gang. I actually do think that this is important, and I do think she has the right approach, right? And so, like, I'm not gonna disagree with it's important for people in the church to, listen to the stories of people who are leaving the church and try to understand why they're leaving the church. And you know what? You don't have to do that with the assumption and the presumption that they're never coming back to the church. You could start that conversation, and part of your motivation for having that conversation could be how the church can better serve people so that people don't leave the church, or what are the issues that you could address that might bring people back into the church. So I don't want it to be a situation where it comes off as I hate every single word that comes out of her mouth and nothing she says is going to be correct. No, the issue for me is the fact that it's sort of one of those things where it's a great thing to do, but you expect there to be material results of you doing so. And so I guess in her position, this is her ministry, this is her channel, this is what she does. It just becomes the routine for her. It's just the content she puts out. Whereas to me, like, and some of us have dealt with this actually. Some of us have dealt with this, right? You start with a Christian friend who has this intent, right? They want to, go to lunch after church or meet up during the week for coffee or whatever, or go out and shoot pool. And a lot of times they like to, bring up, the differences of opinion here, and they just want to hear where you're at, and right. And after a while, it gets frustrating because it's like, I know you're listening to me when we have these conversations. I know you hear the words that are coming out of my mouth, but I'm not convinced that you are taking these conversations seriously and that they're having any influence on you. And it can be a sign of, on one hand, maybe a person literally just, that goose is cooked. They're just too far gone. Or on the other hand, you know, they're anticipating that if they get better at these conversations, it will turn the tide for you, and they think maybe they're just not having the conversations appropriately. But in either case, they're really not listening, and so it's just. I guess it's just painful for me to watch, right? My one black friend, because you're like, man, this is great. I love to have these conversations. I just wish they mattered.
Well, I've been lucky enough that at least a few times in my life, I've seen the conversations make a difference. And I think you have to make peace that we have an audience. There aren't 50 million people watching us, but we do get the same people coming back again and again and again. And that's a testament to, hey, they find value in listening to us. If it's only to laugh at, our jokes, or maybe we're helping them emerge from a series of captive behaviors, or deal with family members who, are maybe challenging to deal with, or even just there's something about themselves that they want to bring out to improve the quality of their life. They want to feel free to be themselves. If we create a space for that, and 50 million people never show up, it's okay. It's okay. We've done what everybody wants to do, pretty much. Everybody wants to make a difference. And a small difference is still a difference.
Yeah, it's crazy because I have had conversations where I think they mattered. And I always say you can't predict who's who. So you have to almost go through the effort regardless, because you never know. But yeah, also, like you said, the more the influence of the channel, they're different goals, right? There's a difference between, the goal of deconverting people, or even just doing counter apologetics for the sake of, it's a hobby or whatever, versus, building community and atheists amongst atheists or secular people, because then, you're not trying to deconvert people. You're just trying to, help hold down the fort for the people you are close to now, right? So, all right, cool. We can keep rolling this.
Washington, D.C., I always say Jacksonville, Florida is the greatest city in America, but Washington, D.C. is right under that. And I'm sure these panelists would disagree with the placement of Jacksonville, Florida, but that's okay. I get to rep my city hard, and not the football team, but just the city. So I'm gonna let our panelists introduce themselves to you all.
My name's Daniel. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
I'm Tish. Glad to be here with you.
Hi, my name's Trayana.
I'm Jasmine.
And my name is Dennis.
I'm glad to have all of y'all here to talk about such a easy topic, right? Not controversial at all. So we're gonna start off on a positive note. When you leave, in order to leave a community, you have to be a part of a community. So you obviously were in church at a certain time. What did you like about church?
It's funny you ask, because I grew up in church. I was churchy of the churchy. Middle school dances, I was a kid in the corner, shouting and playing the tambourine. When I was in church, it did feel like a community. It felt like a family. It was a family for, many cases. It was the fact that I could express myself in, different ways as I felt like it, as I was younger. That was definitely a positive. And also it was the idea of just being able to have a group of like-minded individuals who at that time matched where you were. And that was the benefit of church. And it's all I knew. So that was the only experience I had. So I could lock arms with my other churchy kids in the corner of the middle school dance, right? And just have a good experience. So that was the best part of church.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Tish.
I think I have to agree with Daniel. I grew up in church as well. And I still have friends from the church I grew up, the Baptist church I grew up in. There are still people that, I'm connected to today. And then, the church that carried me through most of my adult life, lots of great friends and, brother and sisterhoods that came out of that time. So it's the sense of belonging and the sense of family and the sense of communion with people that believe the same way you do, live the same or similar lifestyle you do. And I think those were some of the best things that came out of my experience.
Mm-hmm. Triana?
I would have to say a similar thing. For me, I grew up in church as well, but I really enjoyed the community and the support that I got from my church. So that was definitely the best part, the connections in the community.
For me, I would say the best parts were the communities, or a sense of community, as well as the food. Oh, I love the food before. Sometimes we get food after. Yeah, and I also, what also attracted me to it was the traveling. Like, a lot of them traveled to different places and, you know, as missionaries, so they got to meet new people. So I thought that was intriguing. But I'll be honest, most importantly was the food. That brought me, because you go to people's houses and you also experience, again, more sense of community and sense of belonging. So
That Black church.
Can you pause it? Can you
Yeah,
pause
that's
it?
all I'm gonna say.
Can you pause it? Jasmine makes an important point. So we read in the Bible, we've read in the Bible that God supplied food to the Israelites when they were wandering around in the desert. This is a key element that kept Jasmine going to church, is being fed. So why wouldn't God use feeding people as a way to keep them coming back to church? In this, from the point that a lot of homeless people, right, don't have healthy meals on a consistent basis. So if there was a God, he could sort of fix that, either by making the food magically appear in front of them, but it would just keep getting further and further away until they walked into a church, and then the meal would appear in their hands, and they could be given a napkin and some utensils as well.
And what's also interesting is most churches don't want homeless people in them, and they don't. And most of the ones that feed people, the it's set up. It's like it's about the fellowship, right? It's about the fellowship amongst brethren. It's not even giving food who needs. So for the most part, you're feeding people who can feed themselves, which is fine. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with fellowshipping over meals. That any community is going to do that, or they should. It's an easy way to get closer to people, is to share a meal with them.
I'll agree. I'll agree.
But it is interesting, because I always think that churches could do a lot more to help solve the homelessness and the issues associated with it, like such as food insecurity, which is a real shame that there's so many people dealing with it. But
I need to be proactive, because
go ahead.
The day's gonna come, somebody's gonna watch this on their Christian channel, or put this on their Christian channel, and say, why should it be us? I'm like, because Jesus said that was your job. That's why it should be.
Yeah.
Jesus said you should do it. That's why it should be you. If you're really going to be Christian, you got to put up or shut up.
Also, y'all got the money.
God never keeps a dime. Never keeps a dime.
Oh, man. The
Yeah,
food.
and then somebody always has some really good baked goods.
Oh, yeah, the food. No doubt.
Well, for me, it's very similar to what has been shared already. A big part of my social life growing up outside of the home environment was at the church. So one of my fondest memories of making friends or any form of entertainment was within the church community. So I think for sure that was the best part of church growing up.
That's awesome. That's awesome that y'all have that family dynamic is really important when we think about church.
All right. Now, again, good. Community's great. Sense of family, fantastic. Sense of belonging. Oh, all of that. Very heartwarming.
Wow.
But something that needs to be paid attention to in this, and it goes the same, it seems like, for atheists and Christians alike, notice how Jesus is not the reason for the season for anybody. Nobody's main thing that they miss about being in the church or they feel is the benefit of church is, I had this incredible relationship with Jesus, and seems like every time I was down on my luck, Jesus was right there to pick me up. And oh man, it just felt so amazing to be saved and to just know that I was going to be, for most of us, it comes down to that human connection. And it's just interesting how the supernatural and the theology is really not a part of what most of us identify as the primary reason or benefit for being in the church.
That's a great point. I want to read what Liz Allen wrote.
Sure.
Catholic Church here feeds the homeless, but refuses to invite them in. All on styrofoam and nowhere to dispose of it. Gets left all over the neighborhood, it's saying.
Wow.
Oh, thank you for putting her comment in.
Yeah.
That's they're almost there. I think it's beautiful that they're feeding them. But yeah,
Of
those
course.
people probably don't want to just leave it on the ground, but they can't handle another burden of taking it with them and figuring out what to do with it later. It doesn't have a practical use for them after they've eaten the food.
Right.
So maybe the city could step in and put some extra trash cans to not only help them with
you need to invite people in.
Well, look, we can agree they're still not solving the problem. I don't know what that church's budget is like. I could take a look at it if they want. But they probably have the resources to take care of the problem in a better way. Feed the people, give them places to dispose of things, additional trash pickups. The waste management company that handles the needs of that church, the city won't, Liz says, would probably do it for free. Have an extra pickup if they're in the neighborhood. Probably give them an extra can for free. You're feeding people, we'll support you in that. Because when I was in high school, I was president of Latin Club, and we were raising money for charity. I would call these local businesses up. They couldn't wait to participate because people would not ask. Either someone at that company would have to know about a need for them to pitch in, or they would have to seek out, like, is there anything we can help out with, Chamber of Commerce? And they often didn't know, like, nobody's telling us what's needed. Well, here in Liz Allen's neighborhood, it's clear what's needed.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I think the church they want the PR, but they don't want the work. They don't want the smoke.
It's the benefit
do the easy part.
of being.
It's a lot of work to feed people.
Church space, but obviously you're no longer in church space, so that means that the negatives for you outweigh the positives. So, what were the events that led you to leaving church?
So that's a good question, because we were having a little banter amongst ourselves earlier about that. And for me, it really was, I had a feeling prior to college that was just like, something's not clicking. Became much more stressful than enjoyable. Now it gets that way because I was ordained at 15 years old, so I was preaching. I was an itinerant evangelist. I traveled across the country, the East Coast, preaching, and at all the youth services. It was fun. Like I still had fun, but it became a lot more stressful.
Wow.
And when college came, and I had to decide what I was going to major in, I had a lot of competing interests. But one of the areas I was really focused on was sociology, anthropology, philosophy. I wanted to understand more in depth how the human body, how the human mind worked. Because we have this soul, but that's only one part of us, right? Like we're competing against humanity here. So I was like, something's missing. And my pastor at the time said, well, we don't study that because it's witchcraft. And I was like, oh. Back then I was more subservient, so I was just, well, you know what? I don't study that because it's witchcraft. We're not going to do that. But it really hit home at that point, because when I transitioned to campus and I got diverse experiences, when I started, I said it was all I knew because I grew up in church, right? Like the only traveling I did was to the conventions and things like that. And so when I got to college, it really became about experiences and understanding what was out there outside of the four walls of the church building. And that's what opened myself up. So it wasn't just that one instant of philosophy is witchcraft or sociology is witchcraft. It was the idea that church no longer became enjoyable. It became stressful. It became work.
Wow.
I was the church administrator, so I was counting the money, seeing where the money's going, right? Seeing who's doing what, and then had access to all the background of the church. And so, when the pastor said people sneaking out late at night over the pulpit, I know they're talking about, Mother so-and-so's son. And so like the shade of church as well also played a role in it. And that's something that I feel like we don't talk about enough, is that a lot of people, doesn't seem like it's inspired, it's more targeted. And so all those different instances just drove me to experience life outside the four walls.
Yeah, and there was a time when I think a lot of us thought, that was part of the good role of a preacher. He's noticed a couple of couples having marital issues, and so, he can drop in a timely placed sermon on infidelity, right? And he doesn't have to name any names, but he can, address a problem in the community and hopefully bring some healing. But I don't think that's how we think of these things anymore. Like I don't, and it's sort of like defund the police. It's like defund the pastor, right? We now know that there are, I'm serious in the sense that like the same way police were used as a catch-all, right? And we know there's better people to respond to a lot of those calls.
Yeah,
when we have situations when we have situations in our social life, we have a lot better trained people to help people deal with real issues. Like they don't really need to be called out before worship service on Sunday morning. Like that's not really necessarily a great thing.
Well, I want to address non-believer's point here. Oh, I can't see. Non-believer had a comment about the
street preacher.
Street preacher, can you put that up?
Yeah.
I can't read it still. Maybe I can.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Street preachers the other day had a microphone and was still shouting, "The louder you yell the word, the more effective it is?" Question mark. The word of God knocked me over. I think what you could say to such a person, non-believer, they may very well believe that the word of God, when preached loudly, is more effective, but that just isn't true. If you can get a if he's shouting all day and the people who agree with him just walk by and say nothing, the people who disagree with him walk by and say nothing, and no one ever stops to engage and say, "Hey, can you tell me more about this?" Like you see Ray Comfort do this. He does it as a stunt. It's a show for him. And he's not really reaching people. He's taking them out of context, using clips of them. He's not really changing lives, except for those people who were like, yeah, this reaffirms my faith in God. Millennials are screwed up. Gen X is screwed up. Gen Z is screwed up, blah, 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 blah. You don't fix anything. But you could get a quieter area if that guy just understood. If he were to say, would anybody like to have a conversation with me about Christianity? Would anyone like to know more? Rather than just shouting out loud how awful they think society is without fixing the problems that the church has, right? When are they shouting about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what those people mostly do. I mean, I think a lot of evangelizing is disturbing the peace. I don't think anybody could do what they do. Like you couldn't say, I want to sell insurance. So you couldn't just sit there in the middle of a shopping mall or whatever and just be yelling at people about how you're going to die, you're going to get in a car accident, and goddamn, one day, I promise you, one day you will get in the car, and what will happen to you if you don't have State Farm insurance? No, we wouldn't tolerate that. We would not tolerate people standing on street corners, holding up signs about us going to be tortured one day
That's what billboards are for.
and then be trying to take up a collection at the same time.
At the same time, yeah.
You know, there's just we just wouldn't allow that, and I think that's part of the power people feel when they're acting, when they can justify their actions because they're acting on behalf of their faith. It's just, yeah. So that's to me what the yelling is about. It's like the same. Like the one thing I'm really glad I live across the street right now from a church, and which always seems to happen to me. Last time though, I lived across the street from a school, and then the church moved into the school. But anyway, I don't hear this church.
They're following you.
Yeah, I don't hear this church. Like this is Sunday. Like I'll be forgetting that it's Sunday. Like they probably had service. Like I didn't hear them. Like I can't hear them at all. But you know, there are actually, I've looked it up. There are actually most places, the churches basically have the ability to like violate city noise ordinances, and a lot of churches do because they think that's like a big part of drawing people, and they want everyone in the neighborhood to hear them like on Sunday morning. So I'm glad I don't live across the street from one of those churches. But it just goes to that point of like, I just think a lot of it is they're sort of privileged to disturb the peace in one way or another. Yeah, that's the irony, right? State Farm can actually do a lot of good for you when shit hits the fan. The other thing,
get you a life insurance policy that will help you retire more comfortably.
The other thing I wanted to touch on was this person talked about their education, and you know, I kind of remember going through the same thing, like wanting to study psychology and sociology, economics, like. Remember thinking, you know, people are, I don't want to say predictable, but there's a lot of systematic behavior, and I wanted to better understand that. And it is crushing to realize sort of the anti-intellectual nature of the church, but that's a big part of it. Is you cannot really dedicate yourself to the religion's way of going through life and giving yourself a secular education. And that's why, you know, churches are that way. And I don't think most Christians realize how anti-intellectual, how anti-truth the church actually is. In a way, he, like me, was fortunate in that sort of role, that sort of access, you're behind the scenes in the weeds of the church. You know who's who, what's what, and that this is all a show we put on every Sunday. And so maybe it's sort of a benefit, right? Because a lot of people just never have that conversation, so nobody ever says something crazy like that to them. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I would say for me, growing up in church again, it was all encompassing. So it was what I knew. However, when I grew up Baptist, ended up in very strict Pentecostal, holiness, apostolic church. And there were rules on top of rules on top of rules about how we lived, how we communed, everything. There was a rule for everything. And the older I got, the more I started to question some of these rules. And is this really going to get me any closer to Jesus or heaven or God? Like, these just seem like arbitrary rules that are set in place to control. You know, you can't wear pants, you can't go to the movies, you can't eat pork, you can't do this, you can't do that. And it became overwhelming because the answer you got wasn't really clear. It was, this is what we do, this is what we believe. And if you questioned it too much, then you're getting put on the prayer list or you're getting pulled up in front of church to get prayed because clearly you have a demon or something's wrong with you because you're letting the world influence you. So those kinds of things started to really make me question the church that I was attending and, you know, the people that I was around, because you don't see these things. And then the other thing that I think, as I grew in college and then in profession, it was, how is what we're doing, which is, a lot more ritualistic, I feel, than spiritual at some points, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are in church that are churchy and that are religious, but you're not really focusing on the relationship. You're focusing on all the other parts of church. And I think that where I was and the people I was around, we spent a lot of time focused on everything else, and not building that person as an individual. You can't just say God's going to bless you with a business and not point me in the direction to learn about entrepreneurship. How do I write a business plan? That's not being taught. We're saying praise God for the business, but we're not saying how do you get to that business. And I think as I grew up and I got older, those kinds of things, coupled with the fact that I had a busy work schedule, kind of helped me ease myself out the door, because of work and my travel schedule, I wasn't able to come every week anyway. So it was more about, I'll catch you a Bible study, or I'll catch the replay if there was a video. And then it became easier and easier, because I realized I'm not as stressed, and because I'm not around you people that get on my nerves now. And so it was that kind of eased me out the door of the four walls, but I still love God. I don't feel like that hasn't changed. And I feel like in some ways my connection changed, because I wasn't reliant on other people for my connection to God.
Okay, so maybe she's still a believer, or was still a believer. Interesting. And I always joked about internet Christians, but because I think some of the apologist people, they just don't feel like they're very different Christians. It doesn't feel like their faith is, rooted in the same experience that I feel congregational Christians are. Like, to me,
The apologist has a bigger investment in it.
Yeah, but I also don't think they be in church on Sunday. Like, I think a lot of them are, but a lot of them are not. Like, a lot of them, I think, right? Because the way they talk to you, like they're like, church people don't talk like this, or this isn't what, how most people feel about Christianity. Like, I don't want to name names, but it just seems like a lot of them, they just Christian from home, That's the best way.
Telecommuting, they're telechristianing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think if we went around and we stood at Venice Beach or wherever with a camera and some signs saying, "Hey, we'd like to ask you how often you go to church," or whatever, we'd get people walking up to us telling us their answer. But we certainly would have lots of Christians who say, "I don't need to go to church. The Bible doesn't say I have to go to church." And they'll smile when they say it.
Yes.
So I don't know what kind of Christianity they're doing. I don't know.
Right.
It may be very passive. We talked about the Pew Research studies that show just how little people who profess to be Christians engage in reading the Bible.
I'm gonna give you a hot take here. I think they're openly two-faced about it. Like, my own mother tried to literally in one conversation tell me she doesn't understand why me being an atheist is such a big deal. It doesn't have to be that serious. Her religion's not that important to her. It's really just kind of like they minimize it. Like, oh, it's what we don't know. See, we're not that serious about our religion. No. And then when you turn around and you're like, okay, well then let's talk about you leaving this cult because it's not true, right? I'm always going to be a Christian. God is the center of my life. It's the center of my identity. Like they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to, feel like they can hang in the world with all the secular people and not be the crazy religious nutter butter. But when you come to actually challenging their faith and stuff like that, then you realize that people don't fight that voraciously to hang on to things that aren't important to me. You know what I mean?
To them, yeah, they don't.
Yeah. To them, yeah. Sorry.
It may be. I'm thinking of the Bible itself, where you're supposed to not deny Jesus. If you're somebody like me, you go to the is it First John that talks about people like me who say like, I don't even think Jesus is real. Like I don't even give him that much. I'm like the worst kind of person. It would call me a liar because I say that Christ did not come in the flesh and die for them. Like, nah, I don't believe that's the case. Can you prove it to me? Well, the book says so. Well, shoot, I probably got 100 books in this house, you know, and some of them are even fiction. So let's just say I have 20 fictional books in my house. They're making a lot of claims in those books, but it's fiction, and it's to be understood as fiction. And alongside something the writer made up is something that is factually true about the world. Be that the geography of a place, a cultural custom, or something like that. It can put those things side by side. It's designed to enrich the experience of enjoying the story.
Yeah.
So for me, I read the stories in here. I don't know how much history I'm reading because it has talking donkeys and a talking bush. Right. It has a guy calling down fire from the sky to light a big pile of wood. It has a guy walking on water and healing people just because they think he could. You know, I'm sorry. I'll take Dr. Seuss every day over the morality or the fanciful tales of the Bible. I'll take it every day.
Yes. And that's kind of the thing I believe too, is that we have much better cultural products for instruction and moral tales and all that type of stuff. And I think it's interesting, like in Utah, where they tried to, get books banned on certain, criteria of things that are inappropriate for children to be reading about. Basically, they messed around and actually got the Bible banned.
But look, it's one of the books that should be. If you're banning books because of sexually explicit
graphic content,
you should do that. If you're banning books because of the portrayal of killing, you should do this. If you're banning books because of the portrayal of violence, you have to ban this book.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're being hypocritical. But at the same time, you know what? I kind of want to be at one of those meetings where they're talking about this and someone defends not banning the Bible and even encourages that the Bible be taught in school. I'm one of these people.
The irony is that the senator who proposed the bill is in that exact position. Like he proposed the bill, and then after the Bible got banned, he's literally trying to say why he doesn't think it should apply to the Bible.
But look, here's what's wrong with that guy's thinking. If you're a teenager in the United States of America and you have a Christian parent or grandparent, you probably have your own Bible. There's probably at least a Bible in your home. You could ignore it just as much as you ignore anything else. The problem is, I really do think this. A lot of those people who are promoting how great the Bible is have never read it. That senator is statistically, right? He is unlikely to have read the entire thing. He is statistically unlikely to have read it on a regular basis. He's statistically unlikely to follow all 613 commandments that are in the Old Testament, let alone the new commandment that Jesus gives him, right? So the fight to preserve the integrity of a book that shows you how little integrity its God has is astonishing to me. I don't think the Bible should be taught in school, but the fact that you want all these other people, you want it shoved down their throats, tells me that you're not willing to put in the work at home. If it was so important, if it was like, I remember sitting at the kitchen table as a little kid doing my homework. It was important that I do my homework. because I wanted to be a smart kid. I wanted to be able to prove it to people, have understanding of different things. I remember sitting there doing my homework, and I hope one day when I'm a dad, I can sit there with my kids at the table as they do their homework and answer their questions when they have them. Right?
Right.
The fact that this Bible is sitting in statistically probably most homes in the United States and yet goes unread tells you its value. That's what it's worth to people. Pretty much nothing, or it's holding a door open, or as I stated on Hot Program before, it's under a light on a display stand.
Mm-hmm.
Do you even know what's in there? It's thick. This is over 1,300 pages in a big print Bible. Do people even know what it contains? Who own one?
No.
Statistically, no, they don't. If they haven't made a movie about it, they don't really know. If it's not been in a sermon, when they preach about King David, how great he is. Oh, we know he had issues with Bathsheba, but that's about what they'll say. They'll mention Bathsheba.
But
There's other stuff.
But they do know what God doesn't like. They do know that a man is supposed to be the head over a woman. They do know the Bible says in its abomination to be homosexual. They do know that you're not
David and
supposed to have sex
Jonathan
outside of marriage. They do
naked
know,
in the field, kissing each other.
No, I mean, of course, there are the examples we could point out where these things are happening. But it's just amazing to me, like, they get the bigotry parts. They get the parts that allow them to be judgmental. They get and so it's just that's what's crazy. But then they act like that's not what the faith is about.
I gotta say this. I'm sorry to interrupt you because you just reminded me. There's a lot of energy put into people touting how great the Bible is so that they can maintain their own character flaws. Now I'm saying that based on what you just said, that it enables them to be bigots. Right? It is self-preservation for their bigotry. It is self-preservation for their finger pointing. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. But yeah, I think that's it, Pocket Locker. I think you made an excellent point there.
Thanks.
Got to get it for yourself.
Absolutely. So for me, I slowly backed out of the church. So much so that the person that sent me the information for this talk was like, "You're probably still in church, but you'll still be interested in this." And I was like, "I'm actually not. I'm not in church, but I'll go ahead and reach out." But for me, before college, I was actually starting to grapple with these all the rules, and you can't wear this, can't do this, can't hang out with those people, don't watch Harry Potter, that's witchcraft, all of this stuff. And I was just like, for some reason, this is starting to feel like a cult. And I was like, and I brought that up, and that was not the right thing to do in their eyes. And I was questioning, and I shouldn't have been. So I was just kind of like, okay, I was wrong. That was before I went to college. I'm like, you know what, I'm still a Christian, maybe shouldn't ask that. But then I went to college and I joined a college ministry, which was kind of like a white evangelical ministry. So now I'm torn with being Christian and I'm torn with being Black, because being in the ministry, it was like, I don't fit here in two ways. And so now I'm all torn up, but I'm still giving Christianity a try. And I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna stay in it. So towards like my junior year, I joined a church. It was like a church plant. And I had a problem there that I felt like the pastor wasn't really taking seriously. We talked about it. I love the people there, and he apologized. But I used that opportunity to kind of just slowly back out, and I just stopped going. So that was my 3-step back out of the church for me.
Well, for me, it was going to church always felt like a part of the routine. Every Sunday we going, even if I'm staying at my grandparents' house, a friend's house. I know someone tell me we're gonna go to church, and my idea of going to church is just meeting new people and learn about God and the Bible stories and things like that. And then as I got older, it became a moment of, I don't want to go anymore. And I don't want to have to say I'm sick to not go. And again, it was more so because of the community. There were people there my age that I could relate to. You know, we do something maybe after church. It just felt good to go. But then when they weren't there, it's just like, why am I here? And then as I was growing, I noticed my beliefs changed. Like when I was younger in church, like in high school in church, like whatever they told me, it was bond. That's what we're going to do, and that's how I'm going to believe it. But there was still something in the back of me that was like questioning that. I'd write people off because they weren't within the word. And I'll be honest, I didn't even know what the word was, but it's like, if that's what, you know, God say, that's what God say. And that's how my parents kind of put it on me. If God say this, then that's what it is. But then as I'm listening to this man tell me what God say, it doesn't fit with what my beliefs were. So that kind of made me kind of like, I'm gonna start taking a foot out of the door, you know? Then when COVID hit, it's just like, we're not really going. But right before COVID, we were also trying to find a church. And then I'll be honest, I didn't want to, because it was just like, it just seemed too much to do. It's like, just here for the weekend. Nah, I don't like this one. And nothing fit. So then when COVID hit, we weren't going. I tried the little, you know, you watch them on YouTube. And then I caught a few episodes where they were repeats. And then it's just like, nah, I don't have to go. And then the same thing happened with the radio. I'd listen to the sermon. Then I said, oh, it's a holiday. It's not playing anymore. So I fell off and kind of didn't really look back after that. More so trying to figure out where do I fit with God? Not so much Jesus, or if I were to look at other religions, I don't really care about the prophets. I want to learn more about God. And that was just my idea of it.
The prophets made up the story about God. The stories about God.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know how many of these people are deconverts versus how many of them are just people who left the church and now believe in some sort of, you know, whatever.
The fluffy God.
The fluffy God. They say they're spiritual or, you know, moralistic deism or whatever. That would be interesting. It'd be an interesting motivation to follow up on and see. I would like to see some of the other conversations with these people, because that could be a whole thing right there, right? Like it's you know, I'm always wanting to talk about why people leave the church, because the church is sort of the center of the faith, and that could just be part of the journey, right? Like for a lot of people, could you leave the church and then, you know, you sort of deconstruct from belief in God later on. But it's also very different to talk to people who no longer believe in God and are no longer in the church versus people who still believe in God but weren't happy about something in the church.
I think a lot of people do something that I attempted to do for a while. I wanted a God on my terms. I wanted to decide what the God, I'd say, would not do. Understanding the story of the Tower of Babel. And that's when I figured out, when I read that, I was reading the Bible cover to cover. When I read that, I said, this is a fake story. This is a parable. Where the gods really come down to earth to do a building inspection and get upset that these people are actually cooperating and getting along, when there's so many verses about cooperating and getting along. And they're trying to make a name for themselves. Now, in that sense, a name wouldn't be a deity. They're trying to make a reputation for themselves. And this bothered God. And so they confused the languages so that the people couldn't work together so well anymore. And that explains why.
Yeah, God is literally the author of confusion, according to the Bible.
He's literally mucking it up.
Yeah.
We can go to, again, I spoke about the Egyptians during the proposed Exodus. God is wreaking havoc just before that happens on the Egyptians, killing innocent people. I'm sorry, I don't want a God that's that way. I don't want a God that has less problem-solving ability than me. And if God has things to learn from me, he's not worthy of being a God. I'm sorry. It's not that I have nothing to contribute, but a God would already know what I know. A God would have already figured out a better way. And so as I was on my way out, I was sort of believing in the fluffy God, that the fluffy God can do it. You know, he's comfortable. He's like a great big intergalactic teddy bear.
Right,
He actually
right.
genuinely cares about your problem. He doesn't want to make you suffer. But he's not going to necessarily stop all suffering. He wants you to know that you have the ability to reach out and help someone to alleviate their suffering, because people are going to do it for you. That's going to make the world appear beautiful no matter how horrific things are around you. You're going to see that there's great beauty in them. I had the fluffy God.
Yeah. Yeah. The
And
fluffy
then
God.
one Sunday, listening to the minister, he quotes a book I was reading. And I said to myself, I don't need to be here. That guy is no further along than I am. He's still reading a book to get an idea what to say to that room full of people. The thousands, it was a mega church, the thousands that come there every week to hear him speak, or hear whoever, whichever. They had a big ministry staff to hear one of those people speak. And they did a beautiful job of, reaching out to us from the pulpit. But that day, the fluffy God died. The need for the fluffy God died. So I think maybe a couple of these people have the fluffy God, but I wouldn't assume all of them do. If I'm guessing, I don't remember the guy's name. The guy with the wearing all black, he's out. That dude, I don't think that dude's going to church anymore.
Yeah.
Dennis probably goes with his mom once in a while, mom and dad, or what.
True.
Jasmine, I would assume Jasmine has discovered beach volleyball or something like that, and she does stuff like that, And then Treyana, who's on the edge of the couch here, I have no clue. But she said, someone told her, "Oh, you're still in church. Probably you might be, we might like this sort of thing for this program we're watching here." I'm assuming that she's like done, like super done. And then the woman in the chair on the left, on
Yeah.
our left as we watch this, I don't know what her deal is, but I think she hasn't gone in years and has just been like, nah, I'm done with all that stuff.
Right.
Again, I've said it many times. I think most people are atheists and just don't know that that's what they should call it. I think the biggest number of believers on earth are the fluffy God believers. They believe in that wonderful, supportive, divine, kick-ass God that doesn't kick anybody's ass. He's encouraging. He or she it is sweet, encouraging, uplifting, has your best interest at heart, and is utterly unwilling to harm another person, to see you through, and wants to encourage you to solve your own problems. I think that's the fluffy God is the chief God. It's no longer El. It's no longer Yahweh. It's not Allah. It's fluffy.
It's fluffy God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The marshmallow man in the sky.
That's why clouds look that way, Pocket Locker.
The great marshmallow man in the sky.
So for me, I was raised in a Catholic home, and then in my early teens, I transitioned to non-denominational, and then in my mid-teens, I went Seventh-day Adventist, and that was all in Rwanda, where I spent majority of my childhood. And so as I got older, moved to the U.S., I started to care about how to engage with culture. As I got older, I had an interest outside of just the home and church bubble, and I wanted to see how the church framework had equipped me to deal with real life. And I noticed that I cared about Jesus coming in the future a lot more than I did with dealing with real problems today. And a lot of what was going on in the world in the US made me reconcile what it means to be Black. I started digging deep into the history of Rwanda, the genocide, noticing the role the church played and the genocide. And so I started seeing a common theme of where church was offering people an escape from real life and not necessarily helping them engage with the culture and make it better.
Mm.
And I started learning more about mental health and trying to figure out what's the church's stance on it. And I learned that the church is not very well equipped to help people struggle with mental health issues.
Everything's a sin issue.
And so I found help and solace going outside of the church. People are more knowledgeable about science, about mental health. And I found communities outside of the church that were more welcoming than the church. So overall, the events that led me away from the church is I think I would summarize it as the church that I've been to is more about Jesus coming in the future. Just figure out how to deal with life right now until he comes, as opposed to like, I need to know how to deal with life right now. And then when Jesus comes, good. But like, need help right now. And the church has got to be relevant for what's going on right now. So that's kind of where I'm at this point.
Thank y'all all for sharing y'all stories. Y'all didn't have to do that. And so I appreciate y'all taking the time to do that.
Thank you all for listening with me.
All right, gang, we made it through. So yeah, for me, like a lot of that was really interesting, especially the guy talking about how the church doesn't deal with real world problems. And this is another one of those issues. There's a lot of issues that really should be deal breakers for most people. For instance, like I think if you realize how prejudiced the church is against LGBTQ community, you see what's going on with the sort of terrorization of queer people in America, and you just got to be out. You just got to be like, sorry, I can't be part of a group that's, upholding that sort of oppression. But mental health should probably be one of those issues too. You know, we're in a different time where people are really, mental health awareness is becoming quite ubiquitous in every stage, right? From children's mental health in school all the way through, readjusting professional expectations because they're not healthy for people, onto, mental health through your senior years. And this is another one of those issues where the church is trying to make everything a sin issue. I've had people try to have religious interventions in my life, sort of like come to Jesus type experiences when I really was in need of real help and mental health services. I've even been in court appointed counseling situations where the organization is religiously based and, they're threatening people, not just with hell, but like arrest,
Yeah, that's the wrong kind of power. They don't need that kind of power.
And we're like, yo, we got to get out of here. And I was able to find a more secular, science-based place. It was a bit of a commute, but I was fortunate that happened. So yeah, again, this is another thing where if people were paying attention, the abuse is clear, the traumatic effect it has on people's lives is clear, but somebody in the chat said it. Christians are just too comfortable. They're just way too comfortable with all of this, and so, they're not willing to. They're not willing to look. The same way they don't read the Bible. Same way they don't read the Bible. They don't look at the problems their religion is causing. They're right there. They're not hard to find.
I saw a short with these two guys, the short on YouTube where these two guys were preaching. You don't get much context for that, but they're approached by, this is in Great Britain, I think. A law enforcement officer approaches them and is challenging them. I guess they were in a place where it wasn't permitted and they're complaining, right? And I said, what the cop could have done? You could have reported some of those people who were sexually assaulting people in the priesthood, and he could go arrest them.
Right.
Now, I'm sure these people, I'm the 2 millionth viewer and the 500,000 comment. They're not going to see it. And nothing's going to change. Right? They want people to be outraged when this book itself, let me preach for a second. When this book for itself says they got to clean up their own house. If somebody has the wrong kind of behavior, they need to throw them out of the synagogue. Why? Because the congregation is supposed to be safe. It's supposed to be a safe place. And for tens of millions of people, it isn't. That's where it's the only place where they will be abused physically. For many more, they will be abused mentally. And as you said, the mental health is the key. Jesus and his apostles aren't walking around casting out demons.
Yeah.
And if you watch, go ahead.
Go ahead. I just was saying we could solve so many of our problems if we would, have an honest national conversation about religion. It's just time for me. It's just time. We have enough scientific evidence that we know none of the unique claims are true. We don't believe in the supernatural. That's stuff but at the same time we're dealing with pressing issues that really require a radical reorganizing of society. And I just think we could do it. We're just dealing with the situation where the church is just too powerful. And if we started an honest conversation about how the church isn't true, about how the religion isn't true, about how, there's really, if we treated it like we treated other cults, like think about if we put half the effort we have put into debunking QAnon into debunking Christianity. Like if we just treated it like, wow, we said like, oh wow, these people really believe that the Democrats are eating babies for adrenochrome, and I'm like, yeah, we could do the same thing. Like these people really believe that an ancient Jew died for their sins, which is a curse on the world, and is going to come back and save them, and the rest of us are going to be condemned to eternal torture.
But he was a wizard, pocket locker. He had powers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's crazy but because if you did a 60-minute story on the rise in non-belief in America, it would be such a game changer. Just such a game changer. But I'm gonna be on that bandwagon. I just think the mainstream media is gutless in this country.
Would you volunteer for an interview with 60 Minutes?
Hell yeah. Hell yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that one. I mean, yeah, of course. Hey, I'm a content creator. We got to get that. That's.
I will. Living in Los Angeles, I have some friends in the industry.
Oh, I would
a lot of them got a lot of free time right now. I'll put the word out and say, hey, anybody know anybody that works on 60 Minutes as a producer? I'm sure all those people are Googleable on LinkedIn.
I might have to cross that strike. What, all the writers and the actors are on strike?
That's not you don't worry about it. You won't be affected by that because it's a non-union show as far as
it is.
The writers and stuff like that. I don't think they have writers. I think they have reporters, which is different. That's more reality TV stuff.
Yeah.
So
exactly. But yeah, we're gonna have to take over because we can't trust the Young Turks anymore. So we'll have to.
Oh, what are they doing now? I don't watch them consistently.
Oh, they've been saying they've been doing a bunch of right-wing grifts, including being transphobic.
Okay. Well, you can't have everything. Let's see. Everything. If the billions of people living in poverty and children dying of malnutrition won't wake up the absence of an interventionist God, then what actually could?
Someone making them feel bad about it personally. That's what we're missing.
But clearly, no. Look, she's saying interventionist God. So there's no God that's going to suddenly letting all this go on for centuries, right? It's not new. It's centuries. We've never been better equipped to end world hunger. than we are now. So there's no God saying, well, why don't you guys just do this? And why don't I just make things just grow? I had an ex-girlfriend who said we should put fruit trees along the highway. So when people were driving, they could get out, and if it was time and the fruit was on the trees, they could just get something to eat off the tree and not have to stop for McDonald's. And it's a beautiful idea on its face, right? If you did this all over major cities, it's a great idea until someone says, yeah, but the rats and the things that eat rats, they'll be everywhere because the trees would outproduce demand. You know, that homeless guy, he doesn't need 80 apples, but he could have them. They'll fall right off the tree. And that thing will just keep on producing peaches, pears, pecans, pistachios, all things that start with P's would just go crazy producing fruit. and it's more than what's needed. And then you have the problems that come along with that particular solution. But there are other solutions. But it's a problem that isn't considered to be worth solving.
So I think the issue with this is that it's not personal to them. People feel blessed and they feel like God has a reason or an explanation as to why other people aren't. And it's just because it's not personal enough. I really do think the key to ending Christianity is shame. I really think it's shame. I think people need to be made to feel two things: shamed and silly, right? And the silly part comes from it's not true. And you believe in some crazy stories. That again, the kind thing is just silly, right? When we could really say a lot more, but we'll just keep it as silly. Some of these things are silly. Talking donkeys, curse on the world, you know, magic powers, baby born to a virgin, dead for 3 days. All that type of stuff is silly.
They use that one twice.
Yeah, and then the shame, the shame comes from the fact that they've ignored so much that their religion really is a cult and it really is having a bad influence on the world, and they're ignoring that for their own comfort. In other words, I just think we need to make people stop feeling like it's cool to be a Christian. I think that's the main. I know, again, it sounds so playground, but I really do think most of them think it's cool. They think it's cute. They think it makes them good. They think it makes them honest. They think it makes them nice, great, moral people. And they're never going to stop being it unless you change that message. Go ahead.
I'm 180 degrees different from you. I would say, well, look, you say you are a Christian. You say that you follow the tenets of the Bible. Show me. Show me. And I would start with the big one. I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm a diabetic. It's not good for me. Sell all you have and give it to the poor and go be a missionary. In saying that, I've eliminated about 90% of the people as Christians. Like they will have to admit, you know, I'm not really willing to do that. I'm not actually willing to do that. That is so radical. And that's probably why it's in the Bible. That's probably why it was mentioned. It's a radical task. But there are other things you can do. The kindness issue, the sharing, the visiting people who are sick, the visiting people who are in prison. I think those are wonderful things for people to do. And to make people feel less ashamed of how they are, to make people feel wanted and not helpless, not powerless. I think the solution is the opposite of what you think. I think if I can fix them, and I can't, right? I can't. If I could fix them, the world could be a better place. But they got to realize the Bible encourages Christians to come out and be separate from people who don't want to be Christians. Does that mean they should have their own country? It probably does. When you look at Acts, how the community put all their resources together, communism, and the church controlled the resources and gave to whoever was in need, you know. So sure, I guess that's one way, but where are they going to set up?
Here,
You know,
in America, they're
in
gonna
the United
pick
States.
Yep, that's the goal.
But I live here. I'm not giving up my freedom.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So you can take it. So somebody else can take it away.
We can't. That's why we can't. And again, we can't co-govern with Christians, because they will always tend to Christian nationalism. They prefer Christians.
I gotta say, I don't think a lot of them know what it means. For instance,
that doesn't
I'm
mean they're
not
not
picking
doing
on
it though.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, believe me, I'm not picking on the lady. I have no desire to pick on her. I think she is trying to do her job, but I think there are things about her job that she goes about doing them the wrong way. She had this board. She's talking about Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden is not an elected official.
Right.
Okay. So I don't want to say I don't give a hoot about Hunter Biden. He's got some problems. I hope he's working on those. But he's not national news as far as I'm concerned. She had a poster board from, I guess it was taken from images taken from a video where he was being intimate, shall we say, with a prostitute. Now she's showing this to people. Now, if I were to go through my Bible and start pointing out what was wrong with that, first of all, she's a woman with authority over a man. That can't happen. Secondly, I got to look and see what she was wearing, because maybe if she was wearing pants, pants are like a man thing, but women started wearing pants at some point.
Crazy.
You know,
She's
but no, I don't want to say that. I don't think she's crazy, but the fact that she's showing this, she should have known better. She should have said, "This is, in my opinion, this is not appropriate for me to do." It's better for her to say, these images exist. Actually, it's better for her to talk about the actual running of this country and
but
not
to me, she's
Biden.
a perfect example. Marjorie Taylor Greene deserves nothing but to be made silly and be shamed. Marjorie Taylor Greene's crazy. You should pay attention to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a great example because she's totally weaponized. Totally weaponized, and she knows better. She knows better.
I don't believe that every person is, that there are people who are irredeemable. Well, no, that's not true. Some people are. If she was murderous, going around killing people like these mass shooters do, I probably wouldn't think much of her or extending her life in any way. The mass shooters, you can put all those guys under the jail, as far as I'm concerned. But I don't want to write her off just because I think she's wrong about. If there's 5 things, she's wrong about 4 of them.
You should subscribe to her on Twitter. You will be singing a different story by next week.
You think? You know what? I'll take you up on that.
She might be worse than Trump.
That's awful.
She also might be his VP candidate.
That's also awful if it's true.
Yeah, and she encourages. She supports mass shooters. She literally is. She made herself famous by harassing parents who were the victims of
the
school shootings.
Sandy Hook. I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw some of that. I don't know how much more there is, but I saw that, and I thought, you know what? This is disgusting. I thought that behavior was disgusting. That young man that she was following around, like, he's probably still grieving. Because he can't get his loved one back.
I think Christianity's dead. I really do. It even gets to a point where it's like not even a fun challenge anymore. It kind of gets boring. Like it's just there's no redeeming the value of something that isn't true. Truth is only the truth if it's truth. You know, and I think we work really hard to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but the baby's a monster, and the baby's probably more dangerous than the bathwater is. So I really think the thing to do is to have a national push for secularism, and it's not going to happen unless. So here's what happens: is if MSNBC, CNN, 60 Minutes, it just takes one of them. It takes one of them to run a story. and 2 or 3 of them to have follow-ups with reasonable people. Of course, Fox News is going to go hard the other way, and it'll just become a big part of the national divide. But I think that would cut church attendance by a third in a matter of 6 months. I mean, think about how much the church has bled out since COVID, right?
Bled out.
If the numbers are supposed to be like church attendance was cut in half, right? The one poll we were looking at said 65 or 68% of people were going. Now it's like 35 or 38% of people going. That's nearly cut in half in just a few years, with no public pushback, none. And now imagine if we really
I would argue that is the pushback.
Yeah,
pushback
but I mean,
is we realized we didn't have to go. They've been telling us we have to go.
Yeah. I just mean like in the mainstream media, like nobody's actually covered it. Nobody's actually, talked about
I think
it as a cult.
We could, as a cult. I think we could find, coverage of how fewer and fewer people go, less and less often. If we look, the sad thing is that people will jump up and down and cry, and a lot of them in government, because they're on camera, right? And say how necessary it is to teach the tenets of the Bible, to teach the morality, of the Bible, because they know thousands, if not millions of people that they represent want them to hear them say that. What typically happens is they may not have a solution. Let me give you an example from my own life. It's more of an analogy, but this happened in my life. I was working for someone she's probably a genius. And I was given the task to manage a particular portion of the company. And there was this one thing that everybody had to do. And I said, I think I have a better way of doing this. And she says, well, if you thought of a better way, go ahead. My better way messed things up on a level that she had never seen before. And I mean disaster. I had 3 people that I oversaw in my department. They got probably another 10 people to help fix this error from other departments that I created. It was my system. It was ruinous. And what she said to me she says, I'm going to go home. Because she saw all the resources put to fixing my problem. I'm going to go home, but I suggest you stay late. And she said, find a way to take the idea you have and bulletproof it, because there's some good ideas in there. The execution wasn't very good. I'm like, I agree. She goes, okay, so fix that. I must have stayed until 1 a.m. that day, brainstorming, working on fixing the problem. Well, a couple days later, the problems were all fixed. And I talked to the people who helped me solve the problem, who cleaned up, right?
Yeah.
I talked to some of the people who were doing things wrong because I told them to. And when I was finished understanding what would make it easy from the point of view of the end user, not me, the end user, then I could put together a really solid solution. So I write it all down. I got it broken out on the chart, and I explain it to my boss. She goes, that sounds like it might work. So try to see if it will work. It did. Someone at corporate says, what are you doing differently? How are you doing this? And I explained what I was doing. She goes, the boss, the corporate boss says, I'm going to have everyone do this. This is just a better way. Then one night, working late, a guy I used to work with peripherally, he and I were talking on the phone, and he told me, oh, we got this idea to do this, And I said, I just did that. I said, I created a whole system for that. Really? What can you tell me about it? So I sent him my model that I had built for all this. And tens of thousands of people use it today. I screwed up. If people don't think there's a better way than this, So they keep going back to this. Don't expect any new solutions. Expect the same problems, and you're going to have to keep using solutions from here, along with what anybody else can think of. But what needs to happen is you thin out the process. And I think a lot of Christians are leaving because they're doing that. They don't know most of what's in here anyway, but they're thinning out the process. Hey, I'm taking out all the stuff I don't need. My truck needs a wiring harness for the engine. Well, I have a wiring harness. It turns out I don't need all the wires because it's not going into a 2006 or 2008 Chevy Tahoe. So I can get rid of all the wires I don't need because it's going in a 1957 Chevy 3200 pickup. You take out what you don't need, and then over time, because it's a society, not a truck, you add what you need, or you come up with new solution.
Yeah, but
entirely new
this is
solution.
the thing. This is the thing you can't do with Christianity. First off, it doesn't contain a shred of a good idea. Like, and
I can't let you say that. I don't agree.
No, but here's what
Go
I mean.
ahead. I don't agree.
Here's what I mean. Like I read the poem yesterday, or part of the poem yesterday. Everything I needed to know in life I learned in kindergarten or whatever. The wisdom that is in the faith is mundane. Like, yeah, okay, Jesus says a nice thing once in a while. There's these wise words, but that is not a unique contribution to society any longer. Like that's an idea that does not serve us as atheists to keep walking around pretending we can learn from the Bible. We can't. We don't like yes, I could put in a book. I could write a book right now. 2 + 2 is 4. Be nice to your neighbor. Don't cheat on your spouse if you're in a committed relationship. Don't throw rocks at people who haven't done anything to you. Nobody is going to say when I die, oh my goodness, Jason Bundy made unbelievable contributions to humanity, because like it doesn't work that way. Literally the only people we give credit for making unique contributions are people who come up with things we didn't already know. We literally know all of the wisdoms and the proverbs and all of that stuff that are in the Bible. They're ubiquitous in other. And they're ubiquitous
they all
in every
existed
religion.
before the Bible.
So I'm not saying it doesn't contain anything worthwhile, but it doesn't actually give us something novel or innovation. And then the other thing is, the core is fucked up, right? Like we could take a Dr. Seuss story and say, you know, it got this part wrong, or it said this weird thing, and we don't talk about this issue like that anymore, or whatever. But at its core, the story is about teamwork or whatever. And but that's not really what religion is about, right? We're buying in the propaganda when we say Christianity is about love your neighbor, and because again, that is ubiquitous in every religion. What's unique about Christianity is Jesus dying for everybody's sin. The gospel. Anytime somebody was
that's not even unique. That's not even unique.
I don't think it's unique either, but that is the main thing. So if we were to like try to improve upon it, we're not going to be able to improve upon it without sticking to the core of it. And once we get, so in other words, like to me, it just the book is really messed up. Like this is what I mean. Like the whole thing's immoral. Like the idea of having a creator is screwed up. The idea of sin is screwed up. None of these miraculous events happened. The idea of vicarious redemption, somebody else paying the price for your transgressions, these are all fundamentally immoral. So that's my issue. To me, we're just delaying the inevitable. It just doesn't work anymore. You know what I mean? Like I'm not trying to. It's beyond like, I don't know. I get that a lot of people feel very strongly about it, but I just don't think it's helping. So I don't know.
I could agree. I do agree that if there were no religions at all, the world would be a better place. I do believe that. There would still be people from culture to culture. I think we could agree that values would be different.
Sure.
from culture to culture, but largely there are those core principles that would be clung to by nearly every culture.
Right.
Cooperation, respect, patience, understanding. I think surely the human race would continue on with those things. We see those things in the animal kingdom and not just with ants and bees,
Right.
you know. So I don't know. It's a tough one, I guess. Maybe in 1,000 years, pocket locker. There won't be any religions, but tomorrow there will be.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
next month there will be. But
Yeah.
I have given thought to. I live near a fairly newly built large Catholic church, and I've thought of going over there and asking someone. So I'm doing this completely above board and respectfully. Hey, can I protest on your church property? Not in front, where it's 200 yards to the door because the parking lot's enormous. Can I just stand right in front on the steps or by the door and protest and explain to them I want to do two things. I want to ask people, do they fact check you, and encourage them to do so. So be there before a service. And then after a completely different service, this isn't a protest, say, what did you learn in church today? And then play it back for the clergy. Here's what people told me that they learned in church today. And I'd be happy to go in there and sit down too. And that way I would take my notes and I would know if whether or not what they were saying is actually correct. Sort of squirrel myself away in some corner or something. But I think most congregations, if they said, sure, go ahead and do that, I'd like to know if people are paying attention too. They'd be stunned at what they got wrong, and they'd be stunned at how few people were listening.
Oh yeah, people are just
How few people
there.
really listen, just there.
Again, people are there because of the community and the sense of
Yeah.
belonging, and and not a single one of them mentioned because the word is so good coming from the
Jesus.
pastor, and I was just
Yeah.
hanging off his every word, and I couldn't stop taking notes. All right, let's go ahead and get up out of here so I can get to my meeting on time. We will probably have our meeting and gather tonight, I believe, probably 8:30 or 9. If you guys will be around from that, we definitely have a few things to go over. We're trying to help do more on social media, get some clips going. So come hang out if you guys want to contribute to that and be part of helping us figure that out. Did you have any closing thoughts, my one black friend?
I want to apologize to the people who've been putting their comments in the chat. I'm trying to do this on my phone. It's more stable than my Asus computer, which you don't have to buy one. But it's more stable. But the way it is, I can't really scroll and see what people have been saying, so I haven't been able to respond to as much as I've wanted to. But I just want to say thank you all for sharing your ideas with us and helping support the conversation. I will find out about 60 Minutes. I got a couple friends.
That would be crazy.
Yeah, I think it would be, look, 60 Minutes obviously is a show that isn't afraid to talk about what's going on in the nation, and good or bad. So this could be a good round table. They get you in there, maybe me
I don't
in there.
think they'd ever do it.
And some clergy. Yeah, they could get Kenneth Copeland, T.D. Jakes, you, me, Paula White. Who else would you want there? Greg Locke. And just let's talk it up. Rick Warren, who I think just retired. Get Rick Warren in there. What does the church need? And I'll even call up Father Tom. I got his number, and he'd have to sit next to me. I don't know how wild he'd be about the rest of the room. I'm just gonna sit with you. It gets crazy in here. I'll be in the car.
All right, gang, let's get out of here.
All right,
as always, be good to yourselves
and each other.
Thank